Welcome into Giants Training Camp Report presented by Investors Bank. I'm Madelyn Burke here with Super Bowl champion Howard Cross. Howard, Giants hitting the practice field for the first time after we saw this team in its first preseason action Saturday against the Jets. What's the focus of today's practice?
Oh, easy. Well, the first thing they're going to do, they're going to try to clean up the mistakes they made in the game, because that's how you learn, is you go back and you review and clean up the mistakes. From an offensive standpoint, they're going to want to, shore up some of the blocks, make sure to get the protections right, talk to the quarterbacks about getting the ball out of their hands, and make sure that they finish drives. They want to get the ball into the end zone. Moving it up and down the field is great. Scoring field goals are okay. You want to score touchdowns. There's going to be a big focus probably this week going into the weekend on scoring touchdowns and getting red zone opportunities. On the defensive side of the ball, they got to start fast earlier. I think they had a lot of problems in the middle of the defense early on. They got gapped a little bit or gashed a little bit, and then they gave up the corners and the edges. After the first series, the defense shut that down. They played very good. So I think those two things are what they're going to look at. I think the return game looked pretty decent as well. They moved the ball. It's going to be interesting to see if other guys will get opportunities or if they're going to stick in the same progress.
Right. Giants co-owner John Mara spoke to the media earlier today, said, hey, this team is looking a lot better on paper. He's looking forward to seeing that translate to wins. And as we look in at this team at practice right now, we got the quarterbacks Daniel Jones, Mike Glennon, and of course just out of frame quarterback Brian Lewerke, who was signed as a part of roster moves. Clayton Thorson was waived injured. They had to trim the roster down to 85 this week. Next week, Dave Gettleman says that they're going to expect more moves. But, the roster moves that we've seen, Alfred Morris, Chris Milton, terminated contract, and then several players moved to IR.
Well, what happens in this time of the year, it's good and bad. For the team, it's good because you have a lot of movement within your team. You can find out who's kind of playing well. If someone's going to be banged up and maybe you can let them go, you can do that. And there'll be players from other teams that you have your eye on, that you're scouting constantly, and you're trying to figure out. You might find an offensive lineman that you didn't know you had. You might find a DB or you didn't know you had. Like half the team in the league is looking for the backup quarterback, and they're all on other teams. And you don't necessarily want to trade for any of these guys. So you're looking for these guys to be released, see if they'll pass through waivers, and if you get your chance, to grab them up.
Right. And we're taking a look right now. Daniel Jones getting some work in. Jerry Shaplinski, the quarterback's coach, said one of the things that they want to see from Daniel Jones this year is just quicker progression, going through his progression, quicker decision making, and a lot of that is going to come with getting more reps. We do anticipate seeing a little bit more of that perhaps in the second preseason game, and Joe Judge said, of course, that third preseason game, the starters are going to be getting a lot of reps.
Well, the preseason is kind of flipped on its head, because years ago it was like you just played a little bit in the first quarter, then you played a half, then you played into the third quarter, your third game, and then by the fourth game you played a quarter maybe. Now it's like totally opposite, because you only have 3 preseason games. And what they're doing is they're taking the first game and using it as the last preseason game, and they're trying to evaluate the guys that are going to make the lower tier first and go forward. And by the second and third game, it'll be like they've progressed to the middle of the season, of the preseason, where you get most of the reps.
Talking about reps right now, we're taking a look at the DBs. We've got James Bradbury here alongside Jabril Peppers, a couple veterans in that room.
NFL Top 100, Bradbury.
There we go. Congrats to Bradbury. We got a couple Giants on that NFL Top 100.
Absolutely.
When you get that nod from your peers, it's a little bit more valuable.
There's a lot of valuable. I know he's likes that, probably celebrating. He got a lot of pats on the back from his teammates, but it's more important he's getting pats on the back from players around the league.
Absolutely. And looking at that DB group as well, one guy that did stand out in Saturday's game, Rodarius Williams. We've seen him flash in practice quite a bit. Hearing from the coaches, they were talking about he kind of got a battlefield promotion, didn't get a lot of work in the slot in practice, but then did that so much in the game. When you're a rookie and you're trying to earn your spot on this roster and coming in a late round draft pick like Rodarius and showing what he did, what do you make of that?
That's what I was saying before about the way the preseason game kind of played out, where you had a lot of your starters out and resting for various reasons, and you get a lot of these guys in that they're not going to get a lot of reps in these games. So when you get your opportunity, you go out and show your wares. And he did a great job in the game, made a lot of plays, was able to cover. They didn't go after him, was very sound in his tackling. That helps out tremendously when you're trying to make a big impression on a coach. and he's getting a little defense, not defense, but a little special teams in.
Yeah, they've got a lot of depth in that secondary. They've put a lot of emphasis in adding to that room and to creating some more competition there. What do you kind of say overall from the improvement that this group has made from last season to where they stand right now?
From a defensive standpoint, the biggest thing is not to rest on your laurels. I think you got guys that are going to be Pro Bowl players, guys that were just on the skirts of being a Pro Bowl player. So those guys are going to move up and be Pro Bowl players. I think, from the linebacker standpoint, the guys who got their hands in the dirt and the secondary, I think they've done a really good job. Again, it's going to be more about can they, take the next step forward, not be a top 5 team, but be a top 2 team, not be a top 10, but be a top 5. You want to be number 1 and number 2 defense. And when you're doing that, you have better chances to win championships.
And as we look in at this drill at practice, this is one of my favorite drills to watch. This is hard to do because, first of all, I despise doing those little up downs, but doing that and then going into coverage, talk us through what we're seeing here, Howard.
So this is getting you up and making you move quick so you can change direction. The easiest thing to do when you're a player is to make a play or do something from a standing position because you can change right and left. But once you leave your feet and you're on the ground and you have to pop up, then you got to get your feet back up under you and get your whole body in position to make a play. So you see these guys getting up quick and trying to get themselves in position to make a play.
A big opportunity too for special teams guys as well, trying to get that leverage, that positioning.
It's good for the special team guys, but it's more important for guys that linebackers, safeties. Even though you can't cut as much as you used to, it's still like you get knocked down, you get trapped in plays, and the play's not over till the whistle blows. So this is a play and a drill that teaches you to get up, move quick, watch them, just look how they're moving their feet, changing their bodies, getting their bodies in the right angle. Down, you're up, you get square up on the runner, and then get right in front of them where you can put your hit on them. Now they're not hitting, but if they were, you'd see a lot of contact.
And not just for the defensive guy though, but the offensive guy, the guy with the ball as well, kind of learning to kind of move in space.
Well, the ball carrier is like designated the side to run to, so he might give a couple steps and go against him to make these guys run. This is a purely, and I do mean a tackling drill.
Now, one of the guys that has been standing out a lot in practice as well, wide receiver David Sills. We saw him make some plays in the game on Saturday as well. Tyke Tolbert was talking about him and what a unique guy he is. I mean, this man moved to Charlotte to work out with Daniel Jones in the offseason. He says, well, my sister lives there. Okay, that's the excuse, but that works. You were working out with the quarterback. Love to see the effort. Tyke was talking about, hey, he was looking around seeing who to put in, and Sills had already run into the huddle, and he kind of loves to steal reps. When you see that work ethic from a guy in a room like a wide receiver's room that is so deep and so competitive, I mean, we were just talking about that. How does somebody set themselves apart in what's going to be a tough competition?
Well, that is the old school mentality, because when we played back 1,000 years ago, we wouldn't let anybody get any reps. So what you would do if there was an opportunity, coach would call for a player or call for a position, you would just start running. They'd have to send you off the field to stop you from getting in. And what he's doing is he's giving himself opportunities. He's letting coach know, hey, I want to be in. And when you get in, you make plays. You're not just running into the field, and then if you don't make plays, go, hey, get out of, what are you doing out here? But he's making plays, so he's always fresh on everyone's mind. He's fresh on the quarterback's mind. He's showing effort. He invested in himself by moving down there. So people see that, people recognize it, remember that. They don't just recognize it on this team. Other teams know that he did that, and they were like, oh, this guy's committed and he's serious about it.
Absolutely. And we just saw Devontae Booker get a few yards in that run right there. What do you make of what we saw from him? Very limited few reps in that first preseason game Saturday.
Again, everybody's still trying to fit in. We're trying to get all our guys up front together, but he'll get better as it goes. You'll see more from everybody this coming week. I think this week, especially from an offensive standpoint, when so many of the starters were cheering the guys on from the sideline, I think the guys that were in did a decent job. Again, like Coach Judge, not to step on his toes, got to finish. You got to get the ball in the end zone. No mistakes. This is like high pressure times, but you got to come through. When they call your number, or if you like Sills, you just run in. You just got to make
I volunteer
plays.
As tribute.
Yes.
A little Hunger Games action. Got in there. We've got the first starters over here. Daniel Jones lining up. That was an interesting element, too, with this offensive line. We did see 4 of the starting offensive linemen get significant work in Saturday's preseason game, but for a few of them, it was the first time playing in front of a crowd, a live crowd. And Nick Gates said earlier in training camp, he's never actually had to work with a silent count as a center. I mean, playing an entire year at center and never doing that, that's going to be a big transition for him this year.
Well, it was pretty cool having a crosstown rival, so to speak, Giants-Jets game, and being able to have a lot of the fans be excited about whatever was going on the field. So that noise, that energy kind of changed the dynamic of what's going on. You got both tackles are second-year guys. Their rookie years, there was nobody in the stands. So like silent snap count, having to be able to predict the jump of the defensive end, it's going to take a little bit to learn. It's going to be very exciting. Even though the year before they played in college where there was crazy. The last year was very unique, especially for the guys that were first-year guys.
Now, I mean, you remember, it's been a minute, but coming out of a big program like Alabama, then your first NFL action, I mean, does that just tangibly feel different? Is there a level of nerves that even in your second year, if this is the first time in front of that kind of a crowd, you got to get used to it?
It was different because at Alabama, we had huge crowds.
Right.
It was crazy. It was loud. The band was playing. But I came out, now, this is how old I am. I came out when they were trying to find or flag teams for making too much noise because they wanted you to be able to hear the snap count. And we played the then Washington football team, and Dexter Manley was out waving a towel, getting the crowd hyped up. You couldn't hear anything, so it's pretty funny.
That's great. Now we're going to look at Bryson Lewerke, the quarterback that was just signed this week. He went to Michigan State. There's definitely some ties, and this guy will get some reps in the preseason, of course, as his third-string quarterback here. What do you know about him? What are you noticing about him right now on the field? Well,
right off the bat, you come in, you're getting signed the first day. You're on the super learning curve, as they say, trying to get everything in, get everything down. He's going to get a lot of the basic stuff, but his most important for him is to continue to watch what Daniel's doing, to see what Daniel's doing in every play, listen to all camps, listen to all the plays, listen to all the calls, listen to all the checks, and all he can do is study day and night until he gets his opportunity, which will be this weekend.
Yeah, and this time in training camp as well, there's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of guys coming into the building, a lot of guys, entering and exiting, and when you are adjusting in the middle of camp, when you've got a new teammate and you're kind of learning to flow together, how do you assimilate someone like that?
The quarterback's the hardest guy. I think a lot of the other positions you can kind of figure out. You can give the running back and tell them, you're going to hit the 6, or you're going to hit the A gap. But you can tell guys to do that. You can tell the receiver, hey, you're going to run an out, and outs and outs and out. You can do a lot of different things for a lot of different guys. But the quarterback has to know everything. He has to know the protection. He has to know which way they're sliding. He has to know what a blitz is coming for. He has to know that the verbiage that they use to call each play and what it means, and does everybody understand it. If the center calls something off, he has to know what that means. And that takes time. So it's going to be very interesting to see how much this kid's a quick study, how quick he can get it done, and how well the guys around him help him out, because a lot of them are dependent on the quarterback to get these calls for them.
Right, and a lot of casual fans might say, oh, well, he's a deeper roster guy. We know Daniel Jones is a starter. You got Mike Glennon, the veteran, but it doesn't really matter because you still have to be able to do the task, right?
Well, yes, and think about this. We had 2 quarterbacks in the game this past week. One of them had a concussion, so he's basically out, and unfortunately the Giants released him, but he's out. All of a sudden, everybody moves up, gets bumped up a notch. Daniel wasn't going to play.
Right.
right. So, but if this happens in the first quarter, so you have to know what to do, what's going on. I think my rookie year, I played in a game where I was like the 3rd tight end in the group, and I was all excited. First series or so, Navarro gets hurt. Next series, Moat gets hurt. And all of a sudden, I'm playing, starting role, and I'm like, okay, I studied that, I know that. So it's pretty interesting.
If you stay ready, you don't got to get ready.
Yep, that's how they say. You have to be prepared as if you're going to play from that, the first play, every play of the game going forward. So you have to know all of it anyway.
Corey Clement get another run out there. He had some significant work on Saturday as well, and outside of that fumble at the goal line, which I'm sure he beat himself up over more than anyone else did, he looked pretty good out there.
I saw him being really patient, following his blocks, being able to cut back a couple times when need be. Did a decent job when they were called on to do some pass protection as well. Nobody just ran over him or anything. So he made, he made some great impressions on the coaching staff.
Darius Slayton showing off some of that speed out there as well. That's one thing that we've known about this young man. He can bring it. As we look at some of the second team, one guy that I know that you and I have talked about a little bit, 44, Rice and John,
Okay.
tight end. I know that you've been watching, you've had your eye on him. What about him interests you?
What's interesting about him is that he's a pure receiver, as he has, shifted down to be a tight end, but he's a pure receiver. Watching him in the game, you can see those receiving skills, the speed, the way he gets on top of guys really quickly, his ability to get past guys, and he's good size. The thing that you saw also in the game is that slightly lost when it comes down to blocking. Not really sure exactly how to get himself involved in that part of the game, even though he might be the move guys we call him, or the flood guy, or the H-back, or whatever they're going to put him in. As you see guys standing in the backfield, he has to be able to know where to put his head, be willing to put his head there, and get himself some leverage to get these blocks in place.
As we see Eli Penny making his way through the fullback.
Nice.
He's been a staple, kind of on that fringe, but he has maintained around this organization for the last few years.
He's done a good job. He's an excellent special teams player. He does a good job of leading when they need him to lead, block, and in the pull situation. But the thing about him that's also valuable, he used to be a running back. He wasn't always a fullback. By him used to be a running back, that gives him an extra value to the team in case something goes wrong. If your starter goes down, he steps up another notch. You need guys like that on the team that have some of that versatility that you can use.
And this is a team, too, from across the board. The more you can do, the more valuable you are. I mean,
100%.
Versatility is the key word in each of these groups.
Versatility and availability.
And availability. Availability is the best ability.
And that is no joke about that. The best ability is definitely availability. And guys being healthy, it's going to be extremely interesting to watch how guys have come out of COVID, how they've practiced. They spent more time together as opposed to we couldn't practice, we couldn't come together and do the workouts, we couldn't do this, we couldn't do that. Now guys are spending more time together, so it shouldn't be as many soft tissue injuries. It should be more continuity, so you say, with practice and everything.
And as we take a look at Saquon Barkley, Judge also mentioned earlier today, they do expect to keep ramping him up. He's looking good. He's responding well. The team heads out to Cleveland on Wednesday for a couple joint practices on Thursday and Friday. And Judge says, I don't anticipate Saquon being in any 11-on-11s just yet, but maybe, some drills, some special activities out there as they work him back. I know he is very eager to get back out there.
Well, the big thing is, like a lot of guys when they get the knee injury, if you can have 8 to 9 months, I think his happened at the beginning of October, so he's like right on the edge of that time to be where you kind of feel the best you can feel. A couple more weeks here or there will probably give him some more confidence as well. You see Daniel Jones here throwing the ball. There he is again, the aforementioned Saquon Barkley. Looks good, looks like he's a player, but he wants to get some contact. He wants to see, you want to test your boundaries because you're always a little nervous.
Right, and that's very different, catching a ball in an open field versus going up against a couple, a few 100-pound defenders.
Yeah, well, it's different in the aspect of once you start to put pressure on that repaired joint, whatever it is, then you start to think about like, oh, okay, I feel okay, I'm safe. I'm all right. I got hit. You get up, like, okay, everything's still intact. Let's keep moving. And that's what kind of guys are looking for once they're coming back in.
I was looking at this defensive line, too. Sean Spencer was talking about them earlier today and said, their football intelligence is really growing. And I asked him, how would you quantify that? He said from last year to this year, in meetings, they're talking more, they're more communicative with each other, they're more engaged in these meeting rooms. It seems like this group is really starting to get into the flow and more football intelligence. And there we go, Coach Chaos, as he's known, Sean Spencer, coaching the Wild Dogs, the D-line.
Nice. Well, with Sean and with Coach Graham, it's more important for these guys to understand the concepts and understand the techniques and be perfect in their fundamentals. The playbook, especially the defensive playbook, is a vast and very exciting thing to be a part of. But they're so concerned with these guys having the fundamentals down, doing everything right, from the way you place your hand to the foot you step with. See him right now, talking about which side to step with, how to lean. This just doesn't come easy or natural. They want you to do it exactly right, so you fit into their scheme as it goes.
And he talked a little bit, too, about how going up against Cleveland later this week, they've got a great offensive line. That's going to be a strong challenge for this group. I mean, they're getting used to each other a little bit. They're knowing each other's tendencies a little bit more. Going against that other group in Cleveland, it'll bring a different look.
It's definitely going to bring a different look. And think about it. Their offensive line goes against two of the premier pass rushers in the league coming off the edges. So they're going to be ready for our guys and be ready for almost everything we have to offer. And then they're different, even though they're different style pass rushers, they're still premier pass rushers. So they're going to be ramped up for speed. They're going to be ramped up for power. They're going to be on the P's and Q's in the practices and in the game.
And of course, this defensive line did lose Dalvin Tomlinson, a captain who signed with Minnesota in the offseason. And, you know, they've been very specific to not compare players, right? Dalvin was a great guy. Now they're going to fill that role with a myriad of other players. Danny Shelton, we saw 75. That man is a big man out there.
Double wide trailer, we say down south. He's a big boy for sure. I think it's going to be interesting to watch these guys as they develop as a team. They had a great chemistry last year and was able to play off of each other. And again, from a D line, they got coaches' defense down. They had great success. Can they grow from there? I'm looking forward to see the growth from that D line.
Growth is the point. This is the time of the year that we're all trying to grow together, get better on every level, and looking forward to seeing how these guys match up with another team as they take practice to Cleveland later this week. For Howard Cross, I'm Madelyn Burke. Thanks for hanging with us here on Giants Training Camp Report presented by Investors Bank.